Let's go to the brief news from the world over this week. The jihad of the Islamic State continues, starting in Libya. Another round of Christian executions. In a grisly video released Sunday, jihadists are seen shooting and beheading two groups of Ethiopian men, 28 in total. These killings echo the beheadings of 21 Coptic Christians that made headlines in February. In the latest massacre, the victims are described as followers of the cross of the enemy Ethiopian church. The victims were migrants trying to reach Europe. The released footage also showed churches and Christian cemeteries being destroyed. Christians are warned in the video to convert to Islam or face a similar fate. The video release came a day after 35 were killed in a suicide attack in Afghanistan, in what appears to be a new front emerging for the Islamic State. The Afghani president blamed the attack on ISIS and is warning that foreign fighters are pouring into the country to help the Taliban. Meanwhile, in Iraq, multiple deadly bomb attacks were reported in and around Baghdad. Thousands have fled the city of Ramadi, just outside Baghdad, as ISIS militants have overrun large portions of that city. More on ISIS, its growing reach around the world and in the U.S. later in the show. And tragedy struck in the Mediterranean Sea as the European migrant crisis continues to escalate. As many as 900 are believed dead after an overcrowded fishing vessel capsized off the coast of Sicily. It was the deadliest shipwreck ever in the Mediterranean. The Italian government has rescued over 10,000 people from the Mediterranean in just the last 2 weeks, an unprecedented number. Since Pope Francis's outreach to Middle Eastern and African migrants at the start of his pontificate, the numbers of those choosing to cross the treacherous waters to Italy have exploded, as have the number of deaths. The mortality rate of Mediterranean migrants this year is already in the thousands, nearly double that of 2014 and 2013 figures. An emergency EU summit convened in Brussels on Thursday to address the crisis. In a related story, police in Sicily this week arrested 15 Muslim migrants for allegedly throwing 12 Christians overboard during a voyage from Libya. Tearful survivors told Palermo police about the attacks. They claim they only survived after chaining themselves together and fighting to stay on board. The Muslims are being charged with multiple murders aggravated by religious hate. And on Wednesday, French authorities said they foiled an imminent attack on several churches after a man was arrested with an arsenal of weapons. The 24-year-old Algerian computer science student was detained on Sunday after he shot himself in the leg. Police followed a trail of blood to his car, where they found the weapons. The Interior Minister of France said the documents found in the suspect's home prove that he was preparing an attack on one or two churches. The suspect was also arrested in connection with the death of a 32-year-old French woman who was found shot to death in her car Sunday morning. Back here in Washington, Republicans are claiming a pro-life victory in the U.S. Senate. A once uncontroversial human trafficking bill stalled when Democrats and Republicans could not come to terms. It finally passed overwhelmingly on Wednesday. The bill initially allocated fines collected from sex criminals to help victims, including medical expenses, but it would not fund abortion. Democrats balked at the exclusion. Under compromise language, all victims' medical expenses will now be allocated from community health center funds, which are already abortion restricted. As part of the deal, Republican Majority Leader Mitch McConnell agreed to clear a confirmation vote for President Obama's Attorney General nominee, Loretta Lynch. And the Vatican has released a few additions to Pope Francis's scheduled September visit to the United States. The Holy See press office announced this week the Pope will travel to Cuba before coming to the United States. The addition of the Cuba visit portends a trip that could be as pastoral as it is political. The lifting of the U.S. embargo against Cuba remains largely unpopular here on Capitol Hill, fueling speculation that the Pope could use his address before a joint session of Congress to urge the end of the long-standing U.S. embargo. The president cannot remove the embargo unilaterally. The Vatican has offered no other details regarding the Cuba visit or its timing. The Vatican also confirmed this week that Pope Francis will canonize Blessed Junipero Serra in Washington, D.C. Blessed Junipero Serra was a Franciscan friar who established the California missions and secured a Bill of Rights for Native peoples. He will become the first United States Hispanic saint. The canonization is scheduled for September 23rd outside the National Shrine here in D.C. EWTN News will, of course, bring you live, comprehensive coverage of Pope Francis's historic visit to the U.S. and Cuba. And Cardinal Francis George, the retired Archbishop of Chicago and the first native Chicagoan to lead the Archdiocese, died April 17th after a nearly 10-year battle with cancer. He was 78. The Cardinal overcame many obstacles in his life, including a childhood bout with polio that left him with a weakened leg and a significant limp. Not that that slowed him down. He was ordained to the Oblates of Mary Immaculate in 1963 and went on to become Bishop of Yakima, Washington, Archbishop of Portland, Oregon, and finally Archbishop of Chicago in 1997. In 2007, Cardinal George was elected president of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. Throughout his term in Chicago, George was a leading figure in the U.S. Church, overseeing the New English translation of the Mass, the zero-tolerance policy for sex abuse by clergy, and the bishop's opposition to the abortion contraceptive provisions in Obamacare. Regarded as one of the greatest minds in the American Church, George was known for his clarity and sharp wit. Cardinal George's funeral Mass was celebrated on Thursday at Holy Name Cathedral in Chicago. Per his wishes, he was buried in a family plot in Illinois. We'll have more on the life and legacy of Francis Cardinal George with Robert Royal later in the show. May Cardinal George rest in peace. On Tuesday, Pope Francis accepted the resignation of Bishop Robert Finn as head of the Diocese of Kansas City, St. Joseph in Missouri. 3 years ago, Bishop Finn became the highest-ranking U.S. Catholic clergyman to be convicted for failing to report a suspected child abuser. Finn was convicted on one misdemeanor count for failing to report to authorities a priest who was found with lewd photographs of young girls on his computer. Bishop Finn's resignation comes as Pope Francis continues to face pressure from the faithful and members of his own Sex Abuse Commission to show that he's serious about holding bishops accountable when they've mishandled or protected child abusers.